Gamers are not afraid to speak up when they feel worried about a product, and that is exactly what's happening with Ghost of Yotei. People are very worried due to the radical activism the lead actress pushes and some of the other team members. But now apparently Sony executives are not happy with this response. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, Ghost of Tsushima is one of my favorite games of all time. I thought it was a superb experience, and while yes, I am a little disappointed we're not continuing Jin's story, I also understand this is hundreds of years later. They wanted to have this new character, and I'm not opposed to having a continuation of the Ghost series with a female lead character. That's not my problem. My issue arises with the politics that may be pushed within this game, and of course, ultimately, the people behind it, because we know that a lot of activists in the industry cannot help themselves and they will push some kind of narrative into the content they're creating. Even if it's extremely subtle, we can still tell, and that was the worry initially by gamers. Most people said visually it looked stunning. It looks very similar to Tsushima. It looks really, really solid, but that doesn't mean that the story is going to be solid, and we have no idea what it's going to entail because they really didn't tell us. Though, even though we're simply raising questions and voicing that we are worried, Sony doesn't like that, and now their executives are not happy with this initial response. YouTuber Endymion shared this information from an alleged insider, so of course take this with a grain of salt, though it's not very shocking, and we have seen executives at a lot of these large companies over the years voice how unhappy they are when gamers simply do not shut up and consume products, so this really isn't that far-fetched, especially coming from Sony. It says, though, apparently Ghost of Yotei blindsided many people that were working at Sony who were not made aware of what Sucker Punch was making. He added, and that people in the mid-levels at Sony were actually confused when it was announced because they were under the impression that Jin Sakai would be getting a sequel. Now, I love Jin Sakai. I think he is a fantastic character, and of course I would have loved for them to continue his story, but at the same time, I get that they might have had this big new idea, and as long as this story ends up being amazing and the people behind it are not pushing a certain narrative that they feel strongly about within this content, I can get behind them, having a new character who is similar to Jin. Clearly she's either got his mask or was inspired by him, so I do think he still ultimately is going to be a big part of the narrative, but if that doesn't happen and they basically completely ignore who he was, then it's not going to turn out well and it's going to be a nightmare for them. But if they can do it in a respectful way, I'm willing to give them a chance. I always say that people are allowed to have their own opinions, but should leave their activism bullshit at the door when going to work, and I hope that the people behind this can do that, though the lead actress has been part of several projects that have been politically driven. We know that a lot of the people at Sucker Punch now have, flags and pronouns in bio, but, if they can make a really great game, Sony has nothing to worry about. So if Sony is extremely worried at this point, are they not feeling confident in this product? Do they know something about what Sucker Punch did with this? There's a lot of questions that we will not have answers to for a long time, but hearing that they're worried makes me even more worried because they're the ones who know the details and what's going on behind the scenes. Now, he does go on to also share that they are not happy at all when it comes to the response of the game either internally at Sony right now. And yeah, they faced a hell of a lot of criticism, but what did they expect? If you want to create a product that receives the least amount of backlash possible, first of all, you have to make a game for the audience you already have, which in this case would be people who want Jin Sakai's story to continue, so you would have had to continue his tale. But but you also would have had to hire people who do not have a slew of posts on their social media about how they hate white people, about how they don't want to listen to other people's opinions simply because they disagree with them politically. You should not probably have ex-executives coming out and saying, if you don't like it, don't buy it. And I know they technically do not, have any hold over Sean Layden anymore, but clearly he still represents everything wrong with Sony. He's still in that Sony exec mindset, and they probably could have reached out to him and right after his post was made and said, hey, listen, maybe you could clarify, I don't know, and try to get yourself out of this controversy. It just doesn't look good for them in totality. So they would have had to, at the end of the day, listen to what gamers want instead of listening to the vocal minority of people like journos who said, oh my God, you need to hire somebody who can be more representative, right? People that, are going to understand all different sorts of viewpoints. That you should have just hired people who are good at their job. And this is the problem with many industries now, and especially entertainment, video games, Hollywood. They're hiring people based on a checklist instead of people who are the best for the job. And I say this all the time. It shouldn't matter what your race is, what your gender is, what your background is. If you are amazing at your job and you are the best for the team, you should get the position. But that's not the way that things work anymore. And you also have to consider that the first game was made right after Gamergate 1 because development started around 2015 as far as we're aware. So that also does not particularly bode well because there were not companies like Sony that had completely implemented things like DEI initiatives, and now that's the case. So there's a lot to worry about with this game. I'm not sitting here telling you to blindly support it. I'm not sitting here telling you that, oh my God, you should be excited for this. And if you are, be extremely cautious. Keep your eye on this project because we do know that, there are radical leftist activists behind this project. As you can see, Erika Ishii, the lead actress's X account says gender all pronouns, so she's a bit confused. She has made posts like this before. For Halloween, I'm going to wear a sexy white bird costume, but only honk and be extremely shitty to people all night. So she has straight up admitted her racism against white people, and Sony still decided to hire her. There are other companies that have hired her too, like EA, for example. So these are the people who are getting, the passes in the industry who, it's okay when they're racist. It's okay when they make posts like this, even though these companies claim to be against hatred and toxicity, yet they're working with individuals like this. She has said some very, very disgusting things in the past, and she also has voiced her support for movements like Black Lives Matter. And I say this a lot, at the end of the day, it shouldn't matter what people's real life political opinions are as long as they are doing their job. Unfortunately, though, you have a company like Sony who hires people for specific reasons, not just because they're the best at their job. And I don't see anything different with this project. So, we have a lot of red flags already being waved here. I want it to be good because the first game was fan-freaking-tastic, but I do not trust these people. I do not trust Sony. I do not trust Erika Ishii to do an amazing job, and I certainly am not going to blindly support a team of developers where the majority of them do have flags and pronouns in bio. So it seems that right now Sony execs are not happy with the initial response, but they really shouldn't have expected anything different when in reality, they could have just milked Jin Sakai's content and his story for all that it's worth, and they could have also simply, hired people who don't hate gamers or white people's existence. So, of course, I'll be continuing to cover this game as we get more information. It's releasing sometime in 2025, and that's if they don't push it back and delay it because they have to, continue working on it. I'm sure it's a very large game. I'm sure it's got a lot of content. So, with the state of the industry and how many delays are going on, it wouldn't be a shocker. But right now, we know it's releasing in 2025, and they are going to have a very rocky road ahead of them. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.